5 things emotionally strong people quietly refuse to do. There is a quiet kind of strength that does not announce itself. It does not argue for its own recognition. It does not demand to be seen. It simply stands, rooted, refusing what no longer belongs to it. And if you have ever felt exhausted by your own emotional depth, if you have ever wondered why you give so much and still feel invisible, the answer might not be that you are weak. The answer might be that you have been saying yes to things emotionally strong people quietly refuse. In this video, we are going to look at 5 things that emotionally strong people quietly refuse to do, not because they are cold or disconnected, but because they have learned that strength is not about how much you can absorb. Strength is about what you stop carrying. Let's start with the first one. They refuse to explain themselves to people committed to misunderstanding. We arrive now at they refuse to explain themselves to people committed to misunderstanding. The first of 5 things emotionally strong people quietly refuse to do. And once you see why over-explanation becomes a trap, you will recognize it everywhere, and you will finally have permission to stop. The trap of over-explanation. There is a particular exhaustion that comes from explaining yourself to someone who has already decided who you are. You can feel it in your body, a tightening in the chest, a rehearsing of sentences in your mind before you even say them. You are not communicating. You are performing, auditioning for a role the other person has no intention of giving you. Psychologist Leon Festinger identified this decades ago in his work on cognitive dissonance. When someone has already formed a fixed belief about you, new information does not update that belief. It gets distorted until it fits. You are not clarifying. You are feeding a machine designed to misunderstand you. Ask yourself honestly, when was the last time you walked away from a conversation feeling lighter? The cost of explaining yourself. Over-explanation is not just exhausting, it is expensive. Every time you explain yourself to someone who has already made up their mind, you hand them evidence. Not evidence of your truth, but evidence of your need for their approval. And that need becomes leverage. Emotionally strong people understand something most people learn too late. You are not required to make sense to people who are invested in not understanding you. Your clarity is not their goal. Your confusion is. So the question becomes not, how do I make them understand me? The question becomes, why do I keep needing them to? The quiet refusal. Here is what helps. The next time you feel the impulse to explain yourself to someone who has already twisted your words, pause. Let the silence sit. Let their misunderstanding belong to them. Try this. Before you respond, count 3 breaths. In that space, remind yourself that you are not on trial. You are not required to submit evidence to a court that has already reached its verdict. Your peace is not a negotiation. This first refusal is the hardest, because it means accepting that some people will never see you clearly, and that is not your work to fix. That is their work, and they may never choose to do it. But your freedom starts the moment you stop handing them the script. They refuse to carry guilt that belongs to someone else. We arrive now at they refuse to carry guilt that belongs to someone else. The second of 5 things emotionally strong people quietly refuse to do. And this refusal cuts deeper than most, because it asks you to examine not what you have done wrong, but what you have been carrying that was never yours to begin with. Borrowed guilt and emotional loyalty. There is a kind of guilt that arrives not from what you did, but from what someone else felt. Maybe it was a parent whose disappointment you absorbed before you even had words for it. Maybe it was a partner who blamed you for their unhappiness, and you accepted the charge because it was easier than facing the truth that they could not carry their own pain. Dr. Brené Brown has written extensively about shame and guilt, and she makes a distinction that matters deeply here. Guilt is, I did something bad. Shame is, I am bad. But there is a third category most people never learn to name: borrowed guilt. The guilt you picked up because someone handed it to you, and you did not know you were allowed to refuse the delivery. Ask yourself, whose guilt have you been carrying, and how long has it been since you checked the label? How borrowed guilt disguises itself. Borrowed guilt is clever. It rarely announces itself. It shows up as loyalty, as responsibility, as I cannot let go because that would mean I never cared. It wraps itself in the language of love, and it keeps you tethered to people and situations that drained you years ago. Emotionally strong people have learned to ask a question most people are afraid to ask. Is this guilt actually mine, or did someone give it to me and I have been carrying it out of habit? Because here is the truth that changes everything. Feeling guilty does not mean you are guilty, and staying heavy does not prove you cared. It only proves you never learned how to put down what was never yours to hold. Returning what was never yours. Start here. Take one piece of borrowed guilt, just one, and examine it. Where did it come from? Who gave it to you? Was there a moment, a conversation, a silence, where you accepted responsibility for something that was never your weight to carry? Now try this. In your mind, or on paper if you need to see it, return it. Not with anger, not with blame, just with clarity. This is not mine. I carried it because I did not know I had a choice. I am putting it down now. The person who gave it to you may never acknowledge the return. They may never thank you. They may not even notice. That is not the point. The point is, your shoulders are not a storage unit for other people's unresolved pain. They refuse to shrink, so others feel comfortable. We arrive now at they refuse to shrink, so others feel comfortable. The third thing emotionally strong people quietly refuse to do, and this is the refusal that changes relationships overnight. Because the people who benefited from your smallness will not celebrate your growth, and that is precisely how you know it is working. The social contract of smallness. From a very young age, many of us learn an unspoken rule. Do not be too much, too loud, too opinionated, too successful, too visible. Be good, be agreeable, be small enough that no one feels threatened by your presence. Psychologist Carl Jung called this the persona, the mask we wear to function in society. But here is what he also understood. A mask worn too long becomes the face, and a person who shrinks for too long forgets they were ever tall. Ask yourself, when did you first learn to make yourself smaller, and who taught you that your full size was a problem? What shrinking costs you. Shrinking is not free. It costs you your voice, your ambition, your ability to look in the mirror and recognize yourself. Every time you dim your own light so someone else does not squint, you are paying a tax on your existence, and the tax compounds. Emotionally strong people have faced this cost and decided it is too high, not because they want to dominate anyone, but because they finally understand that shrinking does not actually serve the people they are shrinking for. It just delays the inevitable moment when the truth of who they are can no longer be contained. Taking up space without apology. Here is what helps. The next time you feel yourself contracting, pulling back a truth, or softening a boundary to keep the peace, ask yourself one question: whose peace am I protecting? And is it actually peace, or is it just the absence of discomfort that someone else should learn to tolerate? Start small. Say one thing today that you would normally swallow. Hold one boundary without explaining it. Let one person be uncomfortable with your fullness. And notice that the world does not end. In fact, your world might finally begin. We have covered 3 of the 5 quiet refusals so far, and what is coming next is the one that separates emotional strength from emotional reactivity. In the next section, we are going to look at what happens when emotionally strong people refuse to let temporary emotions become permanent decisions, and how that single refusal changes the entire trajectory of their lives. Before we look at that, if this gave you language for something you have been carrying silently, subscribe. Most people watching haven't yet, and that single act tells us this quiet work matters enough to keep building. Now let's move on to the 4th refusal. They refuse to let temporary emotions become permanent decisions. We arrive now at they refuse to let temporary emotions become permanent decisions. The 4th of 5 things emotionally strong people quietly refuse to do. And this one requires more internal discipline than any of the others, because it asks you to distrust yourself at the exact moment you feel most certain. The biology of emotional hijacking. Neuroscientist Dr. Andrew Huberman has explained what happens in the brain during intense emotional states. The prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for reasoning and long-term thinking, literally goes offline. Your brain enters what researchers call an amygdala hijack. You are not thinking, you are surviving. And survival mode is not where good decisions are made. It is where relationships end over text messages, where careers are walked away from in the heat of a bad week, where words are spoken that cannot be taken back, no matter how many apologies follow. Emotionally strong people are not people who never feel intense emotion. They are people who have learned to recognize when their decision-making brain is offline and wait for it to come back online before they act. The pause that saves you. Here is what helps. There is a practice called the 24-hour rule. When you are in the grip of a powerful emotion, anger, despair, even euphoria, and you feel compelled to make a major decision, wait 24 hours. Sleep on it. Let the chemistry settle. Because here is what almost always happens. On the other side of 24 hours, the emotion has not disappeared, but it has quieted. And from that quieter place, you can see options that were invisible when you were inside the feeling. Ask yourself, how many of the worst decisions of your life were made in the first hour of a feeling? Building the muscle of delay. Try this. The next time you feel a strong emotional wave, name it silently before you act on it. I am feeling rage. I am feeling despair. I am feeling the urge to burn something down. Just naming it activates a different part of your brain, the part that observes rather than reacts. Then ask yourself, Will this feeling still be true in 24 hours? If the answer is yes, the decision will still be there waiting for you. If the answer is no, congratulations. You just saved yourself from becoming the person you would have had to apologize for. Emotionally strong people are not emotionless. They are simply wise enough to know that feelings are visitors, not architects. They come, they stay for a while, they leave. And the house you build should not be designed by guests who are not planning to stay. Drop where you are watching from in the comments. Sometimes knowing someone in your own city, or your own time zone, is carrying the same invisible weight makes it a little easier to bear. They refuse to seek validation from people who cannot see them. We arrive now at they refuse to seek validation from people who cannot see them. The final of 5 things emotionally strong people quietly refuse to do, and this is perhaps the quietest refusal of all, and the most liberating, because when you stop trying to be visible to those who lack the capacity to perceive you, you finally become visible to yourself. The hunger for being seen. There is a deep human need to be seen, not noticed, not applauded, but truly seen, understood, affirmed. And when that need goes unmet in childhood, in early relationships, in the places where it should have been freely given, it becomes a hunger, a desperate reaching. You may find yourself performing for people who never asked for the performance, shaping yourself to fit a gaze that never really looked at you. And the tragedy is, even if they finally give you the validation you have been chasing, it will not fill the gap, because validation from someone who cannot truly see you is a counterfeit currency. It looks real, but it will not spend where it matters. The freedom of invisibility. There is a strange and powerful freedom in accepting that some people will never see you, not because you are not worth seeing, but because they lack the vision. They see through their own filters, their own wounds, their own projections. They are not looking at you. They are looking at a reflection of themselves and mistaking it for you. And here is what emotionally strong people understand that changes everything. The goal was never to be seen by everyone. The goal was to become someone who no longer needs to be seen by everyone in order to know who they are. Invisibility to the wrong people is not rejection, it is filtration. Becoming your own witness. Try this. The next time you feel the urge to seek external validation, pause, turn inward, ask yourself, what am I hoping they will say to me, and can I say it to myself first? This is not easy work. It is the work of becoming your own witness, of learning to see yourself clearly enough that someone else's blindness no longer threatens your vision, of building a relationship with yourself so steady that external approval becomes optional rather than essential. Emotionally strong people still appreciate being seen, they still welcome affirmation, but they no longer require it to know who they are. They have learned that the most important gaze in the room is not the one across from them, it is the one in the mirror, the one that has finally stopped looking away. Closing reflection. There is a quiet dignity that comes with refusing what the world told you to accept. Emotionally strong people are not born, they are built, slowly, in 1,000 small moments where they chose to stop explaining, stop carrying guilt that was never theirs, stop shrinking, stop reacting, stop seeking what could not be given. And the beautiful truth is this: You do not need to be loud to be strong. You do not need to announce your refusals. You simply need to make them, quietly, consistently, until the life you are living reflects the strength you have been building all along. The Apostle Paul wrote something that lands here with surprising weight. Each one should test their own work. Then they can take pride in themselves alone, without comparing themselves to someone else. Whether you call it God, or the universe, or simply the deep intelligence of a life honestly examined, the principle remains the same. You were not built to be depleted. You were built to be whole. This is Quiet Grind Daily, where self-improvers reset. Calm mind, consistent action.